ladder in the past that feels comfortable with it.
Seems like that kind of guy. Yeah, you mentioned the Raiding Party being a really important card. Walk the Plank, also a new card from Roscon's Rumble. Also not that bad of an inclusion. It just helps you gain tempo. It tends to be a specifically very good card for tempo because if you end up developing onto the board, your opponent develops something right back. Often that's when it's not damaged, and then you can immediately kill and push for damage. That's why I anticipate it to be in something more, you know, like classic tempo rogue in a way, or some kind of aggressive rogue like Miracle Rogue could possibly squeeze it in. Kind of surprised to see Kingsbane Rogue of all decks to utilize it as opposed to other removal tools.
Yeah, I think the reason that is because there are some minions, especially early on, that Kingsbane Rogue have very much trouble dealing with. I would say one of those minions is something like Mountain Giant.
Right.
You know, if a Mountain Giant gets played on turn, 3 or 4 as an even Warlock or a Q block, the Kingsbane Rogue is going to have basically no answer for that. Now with Walk the Plank, they have that really solid answer. In the past, cards like Vile Spine Slayer were ran, but that requires a combo. Sure, it gets a body on the board, but Walk the Plank is just a more efficient version of that.
Yep. And, Sap doesn't do anything against those Mountain Giants, really.
They just replay
them, and you're
them.
like, oh, man, I'm stuck in the same exact position. Now, BoarControl's playing Token Druid. I want to see real quick, fast scan if there's anything new.
I think the biggest highlight is that Cenarius that we
Yes.
saw in the mulligan.
Cenarius, kind of like a what's old is new again type of Cenarius, if you will. As it does give you a little bit more late game boost. I am a little disappointed that people still haven't really caught on much to Treant builds of Token Druid, but perhaps it's the novelty factor more than the actual fact that the deck is good or bad.
Yeah, I also think that, Violet Teachers appear to be a little bit more consistent, at least on the outside. Maybe,
Right.
players start to play with it a bit more and they understand that, it's not necessarily about the Violet Teachers being more consistent, but the power punch that the Tree Speaker can bring. Because there are some board states that I went, if there was a Tree Speaker here, that'd be pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just a 5-mana card that does nothing. You can't really say the same about Teacher. Just playing Teacher out on turn 4 feels pretty good.
I mean, you can say the same thing about like Soul of the Forest.
That is true.
It's like 4 mana do nothing in most cases with your board. It's just that when you do get to stick something onto the board, oh man, is Soul of the Forest amazing. Same thing with Tree Speaker. So I guess they
That's
both
fair.
have their use cases.
Just kind of weigh, how consistent it is to get something like the Treants on the board, because there are a few cards that, give you that Treant tag, Soul of the Forest being one of them. I love Raiding Party.
Raiding Party is really good. NoHandsGamer, gonna actually commit to this Dread Corsair, wants to put maximum pressure. He's thinking
like
about
it.
saving it for the Cutthroat Buccaneer combo.
I don't necessarily think that you would need to. I really like the idea of just putting pressure on the board. We saw NoHandsGamer swing with a 2-attack weapon earlier, really trying to push the damage. I think NoHands realizes that there's no strong way for BoarControl to manage these minions while playing his own minions. So if he's setting up like a 3-turn setup for lethal, why not go for it? Especially when you have, the sprint to draw through. You'll most likely find something like another Raiding Party or the second Cavern Shiny Finder in order to draw the weapon again, or something like a Captain Greenskin, and you just have another charge on your weapon.
Spellstone is okay. The only thing is I feel like with this draw play, BoarControl is setting up for a Spreading Plague opportunity, hoping to draw maybe Arcane Tyrant or some other way to be defensive through, let's say, the branching paths. None of that really came into play here.
One of the big issues for NoHands right now is he would love to swing this dagger as aggressively as possible, as he has been doing, but he doesn't have a way to fetch it right back. He used that Raiding Party just to try and get the Pirates out of his deck. So once he swings his dagger, unless he draws it naturally or finds one of those tools, he's going to be kind of stuck in the water.
Got Doomerang. Doomerang your 2/2.
Okay.
And then equip it and add for a little bit more damage with the Cutthroat Buccaneer.
I really like this. Doomerang isn't one of those cards that is too useful. It's kind of like Naturalize on a Druid Mirror where you have very few targets for it, especially when BoarControl is at 7 life right now.
4 life about to be. Because he has attack with the... Oh, he already did attack.
Did attack.
I was like, why is he pausing?
I know, right?
He paused as if he was afraid he hadn't attacked yet.
He's playing around the Druid Reaver.
Maybe bluffing a prep of some kind.
Oh my gosh, what can BoarControl do? I mean, he has to commit the Spreading Plague.
Spreading Plague... Yeah, Spreading Plague is very scary in the face of a Vanish. Your opponent will Vanish and then just play
the Dread Corsair,
again with potential for even more upside if he's able to prep stuff out.
To be honest, I don't even think No Hands would even need to Vanish, especially because he can just take some value trades on the Plague tokens unless they get buffed up, save the Vanish for a potential Whispering Woods Soul board, and just keep on trucking with the weapon. He's at 7 health this early. This might as well just be Pirate Warrior.
Right, this was a 5. This was turn 5 from Kingsbane Rogue.
Yes.
And I mean, it's because the deck has a lot of low curve, and you saw some people experimenting with an aggressive Kingsbane build, trying to pressure their opponents. Yeah, I think desperate times calls for desperate measures. You won't get the luxury of utilizing all these combos with Whispering Woods and Solifars if you don't survive. And now NoHandsGamer, he always seems to be like a turn ahead of what he wants to be. He drew Raiding Party when he had 2 charges left on his weapon. He used Doomerang on his own minion to try to continue to leverage his attack. And it's like he needs to. If the turns just shifted over one, it would have been perfect.
I know, right? He's playing 1 turn too fast. He's playing on.
It's a real thing that happens. Also, like as much as we're laughing, like oh that's like unfortunate. It's like that also is something that happens fairly often. If people are too impatient and not realizing that they can play with the top of their deck and what they could potentially draw into, they might find themselves in this constantly awkward state of a game where things just don't line up correctly.
I mean, imagine if he also, held on to those cards. I mean, BoarControl would still probably be at a very healthy life total.
Right, and then wouldn't have to Spreading Plague, and instead could be developing a little bit more proactive with like Whispering Woods, Soul Forest, and you'd be in bigger trouble.
Whereas now, BoarControl, you can see him gritting his teeth. He is almost done in the water at this point. Might have to go for Cenarius for taunts.
And a Spellstone?
Yeah, that's what it's kind of looking like right now. Not the most appealing of plays. I mean, if you go for Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest, you are dead.
What if...
And there's no way to draw anything else.
Yeah, I was like, what if you do Whispering Woods, Power of the Wild, and like some other stuff? But I think Cenarius is just better overall.
I mean, you need to develop some kind of defense, and Cenarius is the only way you can put defense in the way.
Yeah. No, I see it. And you're right. I guess the good news for Boar is that he saw that No Hands doesn't have things like Sap to help push a lot of damage. So he can anticipate that No Hands is most likely going to go for a sprint of some kind the following turn. Because Kingsbane Rogue is pretty low curve, so it's kind of weird that he's been floating a lot of mana.
Yeah, even that's kind of terrifying to think that they're just going to draw cards and there's still no defensive tools because this board will get cleared up.
We'll get cleared up, but it does give him the opportunity to maybe draw a swipe off the top.
Vanish.
Oh my, it's so close. So close to lethal, but just not there.
Not quite there. 2 damage off. I wouldn't be opposed to just seeing the sprint come out here. Yeah. Just go ahead and clean up the board.
Would you attack first? And then
I would attack first because I think it's more important to draw the weapon than it is the cards in your deck. I mean, it's very likely that you hit like Raiding Party or something like that. The only reason drawing first would have benefit is if you find something like this, and that's just lethal.
Is that lethal? Is it lethal?
You prep, sap the 2/6, take 2 value trades, push 8 damage face. This is the reason to sprint first, is because you most likely will draw a weapon drawer, and if you draw prep sap or prep, removal, like I think sap was the only way, but No Hands just went for it, got massively rewarded, and I can see why he went for sprint first. It seemed like a great play.
Yeah, I think he recognizes that pressuring the Druids like really important in this spot because very quickly can the tides turn the other way, especially when they start playing things like Ultimate Infestation with Arcane Tyrants. You have to deal with that board, and then all of a sudden the wheels start falling. In fact, this is a Warlock mirror. The bans were Paladins on both sides. So Paladin definitely was the ban for No Hands, but BoarControl with the even Paladin ban. That's pretty interesting.
A lot of the European players have been saying that they think Even Paladin is one of the best decks in the format. They think it's, I remember talking to Orange, and Orange said Even Paladin is the best deck.
Yeah, Admirable said the exact same story. Were you both there? And
Yes, I was in that conversation.
Were you guys having a party without me?
We were having a get-together without you, Dan, and we invited Orange. And we're trying to, call Mutiny, kick you off the desk, put Orange on. Unfortunately, he thought Even Paladin was good, so I didn't want to cast with him. So Dan, please tell me you don't think even Paladin's good.
I think it's a great deck.
Oh gosh.
You think it's bad?
I don't like it. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think it.
You can say you don't think it's the best deck in the game, but you think it's not. You think it's a poor deck?
I don't think it's a poor deck. I just think out of the options you have, I would not select to bring it. I think the one reason that Even Paladin is strong is because just like Even Warlock, it's one of those decks that I think has a very close matchup into everything. So if you feel confident in your play, you may feel like you have a slight edge in almost every matchup, which makes for a very strong Conquest deck.
That's fair. No Even Warlock set up for Mountain Giant on 3. But it's not like BoarControl had the Mountain Giant on 4 himself anyways. Cube Warlock mirrors tend to get pretty wonky at times. Also, I kind of selfishly want... Let's see. I kind of selfishly want No Hands to win this, so that way we can get a Taunt Druid versus Cube Warlock matchup. I think that matchup's really interesting to watch.
I remember that one from a long time ago where both sides said that one side was favored over the other.
Yeah, and it just turns out it's just very back and forth. It depends a lot on deck lists, on the playability, on pan out. I'm a big fan of that matchup.
And you had so many, very unique plays where you would Prince Taldaram, their cube.
Exactly, their cube Hadronox, so you can summon your Void Lords back. Yeah. But then you sometimes get Void Walkers back, but that's okay because you're just trying to fatigue them out because Taunt Druid draws so much deeper than Cube Warlock. It's a very interesting matchup back and forth. So it's a long one though, and it might not even happen if BoarControl takes the victory here.
And I personally always thought Cube Block was favored because there's some games where you just play a giant and win, and then there's other games where you can take them to the long run. There are very few decks in the game that can take something like Cube Block to the late game, and I think Taunt Druid's one of them.
Jeez, just look at this hand from NoHandsGamer. 2 Mountain Giants, 2 Doom cards, and a Void Lord with a skull. Ziliax and a Godfrey, just for extra measure.
And the craziest thing about this is because NoHand's hand is so strong, they don't even need to commit to the skull, and they can just play out the other giant, and then eventually time it to where skull cannot be oozed because BoarControl may have to go for a separate play. Going for the skull here seems very strong, but I mean, we can see that it's going to get punished by this acidic swamp ooze in hand.
Yeah, the ooze here is so crucial, and I really like the Ziliax no attack. It gives him flexibility on a lot, depending on what he's able to draw. And that Spellstone pickup is also very interesting too for the following turn.
You could just do both now. Oh, it looks like he wants to go for the Hellfire to enable the Spellstone to be larger while playing the acidic swamp ooze.
Hellfire is not that amazing until the very late game scenarios of either killing your opponent or clearing off all of the 1/3 Void Walkers.
Yeah, Hellfire does find difficulty getting value in this matchup. You are correct, so I really like the usage of it.
I mean, the best use for it a lot of times is like playing Taldaram and killing the Taldaram off of a cube opening so you can do other cool stuff because it's cheaper. Yeah, that's
also kind of funny enough, it sets up to where Kobold Librarian with the Spellstone, if No Hands were to feel desperate enough to tempo out a Doomguard, could actually clear off the Doomguard as well.
Yeah, you're right. Well, we have that Spellstone at 5 already, so that giant can go down pretty easily, but development back on BoarControl side's not that great. It could be offset by a Doomsayer, but now we start entering really dangerous territories where setting up Doomsayer means your opponent can just drop his Lackey directly into it, and you might be biting off more than you can chew with that.
It's definitely a difficult call to make with this Doomsayer. You definitely need to answer this giant. The question is, how many resources can you commit? I wonder if there's any Spellbreakers in the list. Typically, Spellbreaker has been cut for the most part for engines like, the Corpse Taker engine, or we've seen a lot of High Priestess Jeklicks in lists. But it doesn't appear that either of these players have gone for that. I will say, though, BoarControl does have one copy of Corpse Taker inside of his list.
7, back up to 30, and No Hands once again goes back to the drawing board, and a lot of the big threats, the big 3 threats, which is the 2 Mountain Giants and the Skull Minari, already has been cleared. And that just means NoHandsGamers has to kind of take it a little slower all of a sudden, which finally means that BoarControl might be able to take initiative with some of his decks, or some of his hand. And I gotta say, it's very impressive how he's handled pretty much the ideal hand from his opponent so far. I feel like I would have crumbled at any juncture prior to that.
Especially with 2 Giants and a Skull. From NoHand's
Yeah, with
side,
real substance behind
right?
this. 2 Doom Guards and the Void Lord.
From NoHand's side, though, I wouldn't be opposed to just seeing a Doom Guard be ran out soon, maybe even last turn. I think just the threat of having Doom Guard on the board kind of stops BoarControl from making potential lines of play. I know it's very scary to, you know, warrant discarding cards from your hand, but right now there's no Gul'dan in the hand. Defile's kind of dead. You don't necessarily need the Void Lord. I mean, obviously you would want the Void Lord in the pool, but maybe sometimes just having, you know, 6 Doom Guards in the pool is better than having any Void Lords. So I would like to see NoHands potentially run out this Doom Guard soon. I think maybe last turn was the turn for it, but it's definitely a difficult call to make.
Well, BoarControl picks up the Mountain Giant. It does have the Spearsinger, Umbra, and Cube for turn 9, which gives him some really big explosive potential with this Mountain Giant if he's able to get it down and safely this turn. He could Defile Mountain Giant. I guess he could just squeeze in other stuff. Chooses to instead play the Lackey. Also curious that he did not get the Death Rattle off the Lackey. He could have guaranteed it. So this could be his way to add an extra layer into what his opponent develops. So say his opponent plays like Coin Void Lord or something else like really big, you can trade it in, then go for the Spearsinger, Umbra, and Cube play. So it gives himself flexibility to adapt based off what he sees.
Yeah, it also means that there is a very potential line of play of going for Umbra Cube onto the Lackey to pull out all of the demons as quickly as possible.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a bit ambitious, because sometimes this matchup does come down to fatigue and you might not want to pull out too many cards. But it's definitely something to, you know, consider. With the Skull Minari picked up, this is a difficult turn for BoarControl. He's got so many different options he can run with.
Is it that difficult, though? Mountain Giant Skull Minari seems like a fantastic setup, and then when it pulls Doomguard out, you just cube and with the Spearsinger Umbra for maximum damage.
That is true.
It feels like, you know, he just pretty much
really
got offered
good.
it on a golden plate.
Well, we saw last time a Skull Minari came down, Acidic Swamp Ooze came out and just severely punished that. And there is a copy of Acidic Swamp Ooze in both of these players' lists. Maybe BoarControl feels as if he doesn't necessarily need to commit 5 mana to being punished in a way. But I definitely like what you're saying, though. It is very hard to pass up Giant Skull in one turn. Typically, it's Giant into Skull, but when you can do both in one turn,
Yeah.
that's the best of both worlds.
Is there an alternative line? I mean, you could split the difference, only develop one threat over the other. But I like exactly the setup we're talking about. Yeah.
Well, you saw BoarControl take plenty of time on that turn because that was definitely a difficult one.
And then for NoHands, he knows something big's coming when the Skull comes out with a Mountain Giant and a Void Lord protecting it. It is so scary.
Now NoHands has a very unique play where he can go Doomsayer and potentially cube the Void Lord. I've already seen one Hellfire from BoarControl's side.
And a Defile.
And a Defile. Hoping that potentially BoarControl doesn't have, you know, the cleanest way to get through or potentially any way to get through. And in doing so would reset the board and give NoHands 2 Void Lords on the follow-up, meaning that, you know, potentially double Doomguard could come down onto a free board.
Oh, that's a good point. I like that. I like that setup for more Void Lords, but it does feel a little optimistic. It's not like the opponent has silence, but it's just the fact that you give him like a turn to react with the Skull Minari setup.
Oh, and there's a lot of things that could go wrong there.
Panic.
I know. I don't know how I feel about that. I definitely think Prince Talaram is one of those cards you want to save for our Carnivorous Cube.
Even just looking at NoHands' expression, he just looked unhappy playing it. Very relatable.
That was one of those turns where you kind of look at and you just don't know what to do.
Oh, man.
I didn't know what to do, Dan.
And now we start entering, oh, man, how many times have I played Q block to get the reps in? I know BoarControl is very good at those Defile and Godfrey clears. He actually had posted stuff on Twitter back when Q block was like the #1 deck to play. Talking about like spot lethal here or like do this and that. But all I can say confidently is with no easy way to get past his Void Lord, he doesn't have lethal this turn. There's just no way.
There's got to be Defile here, Dan. I know there's no Defile in the hand.
There probably is.
Defile.
Interesting that he chose to trade that, but I guess it doesn't really matter because the Mountain Giant's going to go to the 3-7.
Yeah, Mountain Giant goes in the 3-7. Wanted to put the most damage on the damaged Doom Guard.
Yeah.
Or maybe just wants to keep the Mountain Giant as healthy as possible.
Right, so that way Defile can't reach it, but Godfrey can. There's got to be some Godfrey clear now.
Spot it, Dan.
Well, the problem is he doesn't actually have a 2-healther immediately.
And that might be why the Giant didn't necessarily go in. I mean, I'm sure BoarControl did it for a very select reason. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, how it changes the math out. The Giant would be at 5 health. I guess that maybe that would affect later on.
So there was no Godfrey clear because there's no after the Void Lord pops.
You would have to commit the Defile alongside the Godfrey, so you'd have to Defile first to put your Void Walkers down to 2 health.
Or you can ooze Godfrey.
Ooze as well. So if you go ooze Godfrey...
Oh, wait, no, you can. You can trade in the 3. You can trade in the 3 Void... Yeah, okay, you're right. So if you play the ooze and then Godfrey and you trade in the Void Walkers, it should be able to get there.
That's actually really strong, too, because you do get rid of the weapon as well.
Yeah, get rid of the weapon, get rid of the cube. Well, you get rid of the weapon, you clear the board.
But do you kill the 2 Doom Guards in that Carnivorous Cube as well?
Oh, that's a good point. I was thinking about the 8 health remaining afterwards. It actually doesn't seem likely. I think he needed to trade in 2 more Void Walkers. He had it. He needed to trade in 2 more Void Walkers to make the Void Walker. Yeah.
The Void. It would not have actually cleared off the Doom Guards. It would have left them at 5-1s.
Still better than having this.
But still better than this.
Wait, you sure they would have left it at 5-1s? It would have. If
no,
it
would have full cleared.
That is a disaster.
Oh boy.
How much damage is this? 5, 10, 13, 16.
You can add another 3. We life tap into a faceless.
Actually, if he summons back 2 Doom Guards.
Trades off the Void Walkers, just gets all Doom Guards back.
I mean, 2 Doom Guards did die? 3 Doom Guards died. And a Void Walker.
Yes,
a Void
3
Lord.
Doom Guards have currently died.
3 Doom Guards and a Void Lord have died. And that's it.
To be honest, I'm not opposed just maybe playing the Giant and Total-Romming one of the Doom Guards and just keep pushing it face. Because you put another Doom Guard in the pool and you can nade it on the board.
Okay. I like that too.
I mean, Gul'dan's fairly strong too because you get that hero power. Looks like BoarControl wants to save on to the Total-Rom for potentially, you know, your opponent's cube. That's another great thing you can do with Total-Rom is you can, you know, it's like faceless. You can copy anything on the board.
Hellfire and Spellstone seems really clean in this position. It takes a lot of discipline. I think if it was like a ladder game, you'd probably let that rip. The Blood Reaver Gul'dan, like, it's probably,
we got this. Don't worry.
There's too much at stake. He's down 0-1, wants to be very meticulous about how he goes about this, and I think this might. This is most likely a lethal opportunity because of how many Doom Guards have died.
So it's not
There's
always
a chance that
lethal, but it's a pretty good chance on top of if even 2 get summoned, you push the 2 face, then what'll happen is...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He had enough to kill
All
Doomsayer,
5 come back.
Could have killed the Doomsayer, gotten lethal.
Very well navigated by BoarControl, and a little shaky from No Hands, taking unnecessary damage that essentially cemented the game in BoarControl's favor. You can argue that BoarControl was pretty much dominant. Or
Yeah, get ready for the next game.
yeah, you better take it with a grain of salt because it was by your own player. It's not too much to. When you make a mistake like that and you lose, you have like almost no right to be upset, in my opinion.
Oh,
Unless your opponent makes an equally egregious error. In that case, by all
and then
means.
everyone's upset.
Well, in that case, you're about to get 100 subs. Because your chat will sympathize with you. Let's go into game number 3. Taunt Druid versus the Death Rattle Hunter. This might as well be a mirror, in my opinion. Where it's just like one side basically tries to establish a wall that the other side can't deal with. And that often happens in the Taunt Druid mirror, and that often tries to happen in this one too.
It's a weird mirror where one game, or at least in this game, it's going to be the Hunter is going to try and end it as early as possible, and the Druid is going to try and take it as late as possible. I think the later the Druid takes it, the better it is. The earlier the Hunter can get on board, the better it is for Hunter. So it's a very close matchup.
They're both in similar, though, that they just have like these overwhelming armies at one point that it's, in my opinion, I've rarely seen it be a very close one where it's like both players might die on any next turn. It's more like one player is just constantly almost threatening lethal every turn, the other player is just like barely surviving.
Trying to turn the corner, exactly. Trying to find something to do, just crawling its way to the end.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Dan, let me tell you about a wild growth off the top. It feels good.
It feels great. It's going to be one of those things where, like, I'm sure somewhere down the line, you know, people are going to be talking about, like, how wild growth just, like okay, you know what's so funny? I was talking to somebody the other day when we were, like, it was, like, day 1 or day 2 of the tournament, I forgot. And they were, like, talking about how they loved, like, some of these old decks that people just absolutely hated. They like, oh, I like really miss Secret Paladin. Or, like... They're like, oh man, I love Jade Druid. That was so awesome.
Oh, no, that's me. I love Jade Druid. No, that is actually
Or like,
me.
Man, like Pirate Warrior was so cool.
You're naming like, all of my favorite decks right now. Besides Secret Paladin, we can all agree that that deck can go away forever.
It's funny to me because that was some of the most complaints you've ever heard about Hearthstone. It's like during that time, that meta. It's just funny because I don't doubt that person is seriously telling me the truth that they love that deck. It's just funny to me because it just shows, once again, how impossible it is to please everybody in this game.
I know. Every deck is going to make somebody mad at some point.
Yeah, or like the fact that you nerf their deck makes them mad, too.
I'm still upset about that Fire War Axe nerf. I still go to bed every night with a picture frame of Fire War Axe.
Yeah, like the Wolverine.
Yeah, the Wolverine meme. I just kind of look at it like, I miss you.
That's pretty funny, actually. No Hands opting to go for a second Ironwood Golem over Nourishing for anything. Perhaps keeping his options flexible. He might need Nourish for draw if he ends up running low on gas, because he already did ramp one time with Wild Growth. It's not like he's ramping to anything else. Also important to note, most Taunt Druids these days don't run Ultimate Infestation, so their card draw isn't nearly as abundant as you'd think it'd be.
There's a couple merits for running up the Golem there. Not only do you want to save the Nourish for card draw, as I think the way the game state's been going, it's going to help No Hands in the long run, but also there's a very niche scenario where BoarControl goes for a Coin Grizzly, and without the Naturalize, which wasn't in the hand at the time, No Hands has no way to answer that, and then a Carnivorous Cube comes out on the Grizzly the following turn, and then a serious amount of pressure starts coming up. So, you know, I think the major reason was to hold on to this Nourish for draw, but there was definitely a bunch of beneficial outputs for playing up the Ironwood Golem.
Yeah, on the other hand, though, one thing I don't really like is investing into so many Ironwood Golems into the pool. If you end up having just a big wall of 3/6s, sure, they're pretty good, but you just have so much better late game potential, and you might be seriously, you know, gimping yourself as time goes on.
Right? Especially when you've only got like one Lich King in the pool, you got 6 golems, and
it's like just a bar, and it's great, you know. You still have a lot of power on the board, like an army of 3/6s. I mean, look like Odd Paladin, just 3/3s that are strong enough sometimes, or Terran.
The one bad thing about Ironwood Golem though is if BoarControl can play it in a way that No Hands has no armor, then
Yeah.
They can't attack. They're just sitting
It's
there.
true. And they don't have Malfurion in this deck list because they're trying to maximize their Witching Hour, which is why I liked the Undertaker build. It felt like you were able to play things like Spreading Plague and Malfurion. Just like the reason why Druid just feels insane. You get to play those other
You get
cards.
to play the just Druid things cards.
And then you don't even have to worry about like people doing silly stuff like Tink Master or, you know, Cornered Sentry to mess with your Witching Hour
And
or
that
Hex.
makes matchups like Big
Shutterwalk
Mage
Shaman.
or Shutterwalk Shaman that much more doable.
So I'm a big fan of that deck list.
I think the one thing with the Undertaker is just that it's very hard to combo off. You would need something like an upgraded Spellstone or something like a Naturalize.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Witching Hour, you just need Carnivorous Cube.
That's
on top
fair.
of it generates so much value. It's definitely a double-edged sword.
No, you're right on that too. Was that tracking being played? It looks like we have a spectator bug.
I think so as well.
Yeah, we'll find out. I think another caveat to what we're talking about in the late game scenario is that there is the possibility of Deathstalker Rexar being a very powerful card because you do have the time often to set up a Carnivorous Cube play with whatever zombies that you get. And that alone might be what propels you to victory if you're able to get really powerful zombies that
You
can
find those
destroy the
bloat bats, you find those poisonous.
Yeah,
You find
just-
those cave hydras.
and just like use Play Dead to clear the board multiple times.
That BoarControl is really thinking on this tracking.
It could have some really hard decisions like Katharina versus Deathstalker Rexar. And it's like one of those things where you're thinking,
Unless he took the Mossy Horror because he thought it was another kind of druid. Oh, okay.
So it must have been a series of mediocre cards like maybe Terrascale Stalker, you know, things of that sort. Oh, okay, we can see it.
Carnivorous Cube,
Thank you, Spectator.
Savannah Highmane.
Yeah, so
That's an interesting one because you already have a cube in hand, so you don't necessarily need the extra cube, especially because you don't have a target initially on the board.
Too many combo pieces.
And then Highmane is strong, but you'd have to use the coin to play it that turn. And I think BoarControl is really trying to coin out this King Crush in order to cube that. So may just go for this, and then may just Mossy Horror on the following turn just to get a 5/5 on the board.
No Hands, branching paths first before he even knows what he wants to do, which is a little amusing to me, given that it's like if you're going to branching paths first, you kind of should know what you want to do in this position. Looks like he opts to gain armor.
Well, I think No Hands went for that initial draw, and then when he saw that he drew the Primordial Drake, he evaluated whether he needed another card in his hand, or if his hand was going to be too bulky that he wouldn't have the time to play out that extra card. So is the 6 armor more beneficial now, when you will never be able to get that 6 armor again?
Yeah. It also could be the fact that how many dragons does he have in his deck?
Oh, that's another good point, because, you know, we've seen a Primordial Drake and a Sleepy Dragon. There have been lists running around that only run one of the Sleepy Dragons.
There's two sleepy dragons in this deck. There's also 2 Dragon Hatchers in NoHandsGamer's list.
Oh, so drawing a second...
So this Dragon Hatcher can pull at most 2 dragons.
Yes.
And it's like, that makes the other Dragon Hatcher dead. So No Hands probably thinking, you know what, I don't want to potentially make my hand useless. Or part of my hand useless.
Then he'd become Dragon Hands Gamer.
That's funny.
Thanks, Dan.
BoarControl picks up the Deathstalker Rexar.
I wonder.
Rexar is powerful, but you need to get something onto the board. You can't really just be passive as this deck.
I agree.
However, this Primordial Drake is looking pretty good here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Although you do damage your own Iron Golems a little bit. Haginox comes into the hand as well. These are all setting up for some fireworks in the future turns. Based off the way the hands are panning out, I'm going to see that No Hands will eventually get that big wall, and BoarControl is going to be dependent on the Deathstalker Rexar, or that King Crush being able to get cubed. And what will happen first will often be the one setting the advantage for that player. But the problem for BoarControl doesn't have that activator for the cube. At least not conveniently.
You know, No Hands right now is probably saying, you know what? even if you have Cube Activator, I can get through all of these Grizzlies, so I am not worried about it. Especially with that Hadronox Naturalized secured in the hand.
Yeah.
Right now, No Hands is just going to want to be getting rid of all of the taunts off of his board. That way he can just make that massive board state. Just keep playing taunt after taunt.
I mean, there is... So the problem with when we're talking about the Cube is that there is an opportunity to play the Cube in this position with Poundmaster Shaw, but there's no easy way for the Cube to die.
Yeah, because you're 1 mana off from Hunter's marking your own Cube to rush it in.
Right. I guess you could still King Crush. Just doesn't look nearly as great.
I think one of the Hunter's marks needs to be used here. I almost wouldn't be surprised to see the Mossy Horror come out just to clean up that Dragon Hatcher. Mossy Horror doesn't really get much utilization besides clearing off your own Devilsaur eggs.
Yep, I like it.
You do not want to be in the spot as Hunter. This is what I'm talking about. When you take Druid to the long game, you are playing a losing battle unless Deathstalker Rexar gives you the Miracle Beasts. It's my favorite voice.
Yeah. It's really fun for sure to play the Mossy Heart. No Hands can just keep up this train. Second Dragon Hatcher. Pulling out the second Primordial Drake.
Ooh.
Fluffy, Snuggles, Facts.
It's no Master Oakheart.
I'll take it.
Yeah, like, honestly, all I'm afraid of these days is the Master Oakheart being played. Because that's when you're like, oh man, that's just too much to come back from.
And the best part for, I was going to say one of the redeeming factors in this matchup is sometimes you can mind control tech away threats. But the best part for NoHandsGamer right here is BoarControl does not have a copy of Mind Control Tech inside of his list.
Yep, it's a little punish there. So King Crush can come down and will actually be protected unless opponent does additional damage, which NoHandsGamer does have available to him because of the Primordial Drake in hand. But what Boar doesn't know is that this is the last dragon being pulled from NoHands' deck. And so in his mind, he might feel like he has to remove the Dragon Hatcher yet again, and the only way to do so is a Hunter's Mark play.
Ooh, a Hunter's Mark Deathstalker Rexar. That does not look appealing.
That is not great.
Especially because Hunter's Mark is being put onto a 2/4.
Yeah, so the early gambit from No Hands to cube the Ironwood Golem ends up paying off because it set up so many roadblocks for BoarControl to do effective removal tools without having to use it directly on the Dragon Hatcher.
Not only that, but the first Carnivorous Cube just put in a lot of work of pushing a little bit of damage, maybe getting some value trades in.
Yep.
You could have Master Shaw and Carnivorous Cube the
oh boy.
Mossy Horror.
He has not a lot of time to build his beast either.
I mean, did he just play the Prince Calypso to be safe?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. I think that's better. Instead of potentially getting a very bad mixture of beasts. Choosing not to attack into the Ironwood Golem either. I think maybe he just potentially ran out of time. But either way, bumping it probably is a little bit more risque because it can suicide and then Hadronox can revive it. Sorry, not risque. Risky. Although I don't judge people if that's something that they like, if they're into.
That sounded better to me.
Yeah, monsters on trees action. I don't know. I mean, it is kind of Witchwood themed. Okay, so Boar got some information there, seeing that the Dragon Hatcher gamble did pay off. No extra dragons being pulled gives Boar a pretty good idea of what's remaining in the hand. Primordial Drake number 2. And Terrascale Stalker got picked up.
I think for BoarControl here, he is going to try his hardest to find a way to put King Crush onto a semi-open board so he can cube and Terrascale Stalker it. I think that's, besides building beasts, I think that's his one way to try and win the game. But right now, he can't just do it. Oh, is that what I think it is?
That is a poisonous Zombeast, and he's going to clear off most of his board.
Now that is a bird.
There's not a very easy way to clear off. What's going on here?
The craziest thing, though, for BoarControl, if he had made that bump last turn, he would have been able to clear off the Dragon Hatcher as well,
Yeah.
protecting the Vicious Fledgling.
Yeah, exactly.
But then again,
But he knew that
Primordial Drake.
Yeah. Still, though. Yeah, if anything, it ends up working out okay because then the Mazu Heart survives. Adrenox.
naturalized.
And that is going to be a big wave of 3 6s plus a couple Sleepy Dragons in the mix.
That is a very strong first Hadronox board. Typically when you Hadronox first, you get like 3 to 4 minions, and you're kind of like, this will keep me alive before I can Witching Hour Q. But this one right here, this is a full board, Dan.
But Spider Bomb plus Cube? Oh no, he can't. Doesn't have enough. He doesn't have enough mana to, or sorry, enough damage on his opponent's board. That's where having opponent's Lich King is really important, actually.
Just Spider Bomb, double Terror Scale.
Good too.
Maybe potentially try and clean up as much as possible. You can rush in. I mean, or there's just something like Bloat Bat Poisonous.
Yeah, Bloatbat Poisoners with Rush would be great. Galaka Crawler and Emperor Cobra. It's decent removal.
It's just another tool with Poisonous as well.
Man, it's just exactly what you're saying, though. Half this board would be useless. More than half this board would be useless if No Hands had less than the amount of armor required to activate the Ironwood Golem.
But BoarControl never really had any chance to chip off the armor because the way No Hands played it.
Yep. It's all true.
This would be a Spider Bomb Cube play.
Yeah, I think so. Oh. Perhaps just the Galactic Crawler.
Okay. It kind of ate a pirate.
Yeah.
Just didn't get that buff.
I mean, it does love treasure like pirates do. You're not too far off. Lich King. Wow. Not to mention that there's still also Witching Hour and Cube. And by the way, Primordial Drake can clear off most of this board. It's just looking very good right now for No Hands. BoarControl is going to need a very big sweep right now, and then some.
And No Hands is fine just getting this Ironwood Golem off the board. Why not? These B-stand are going to need to be miraculous.
It's not impossible, though. With Playdead and Terror Scale Stalker, if he gets Poisonous Blowback, he can activate it twice. The only problem is that he doesn't have much time left because he could just die at any second. Tundra Rhino? Stealth? It's a good mixture, but is he just going to die?
Yeah, definitely a
There's
good
19
mixture,
power
but
on
in
the
this
board.
situation, he probably has to just kill the Lich King.
Yeah.
Rough.
And is he dead anyways? 4, 8, 11, 16, 17. That is death. Death Grip, or Death Coil rather, is enough damage to wrap up this game, and No Hands is going to go to a 2-1 lead. Oh my gosh. Oh no, Dr. J. Does he not know? I think he knows. Okay, he's attacking. He's attacking.
I mean, worst case scenario, you put all the minions face first,
Yeah,
right?
and then you're like,
and then you're
oh,
like,
he's at 6. Okay. Yeah. All right. We just want to double check and triple check just to make sure, but that's going to wrap it up, and we're going to game number 4 with Q-Block remaining as No Hands' last deck.
and Q-Block into, I would say, Death Rattle Hunter. That's probably win it. They kind of hype themselves up going into the next game.
Oh,
And some
yeah.
players go,
It's
I'm
a
not going
big
to waste
mental
my
victory,
time.
yeah.
If I don't win this one, I wasn't meant to win the series.
It's a big mental victory a lot of times. You're like, okay, the hardest match is out of the way. I'm just going to go for it. Now, the way that BoarControl can win is if there goes an early board setup that No Hands can't answer. Let's say you Whispering Wiz on 4, nothing on the backswing. That's usually what ends up happening for a Token Druid victory to sneak in.
There's a lot of tools that, even Warlock has either been dropping or doesn't necessarily have that Q-Block is going to have access to. One of those being Doomsayer. Doomsayer was played sometimes in even lock, but a lot of players have dropped that recently. So if No Hands is kind of scared of potentially a Whispering Woods on 4, can just run out the Doomsayer to block that and Violet Teacher.
Is it important for Boar to do anything right now? Like, so he can grab value over killing the Cobalt Librarian over 2 turns. But is that too slow? Because he can Hero Power and then take his time, but he can also Spellstone and Power the Wild and start chipping away at Cube Warlock. And Cube Warlock isn't like its sister deck, Even Warlock, where the health totals are important. You can pressure as much as you want without fear of a Hooked Reaver.
Yeah, I like what BoarControl has set up here, just getting that 3-2 most likely on the board next turn. If No Hand sees this, he could potentially just, you know, maybe not life tap this turn and play a Lackey,
yeah.
but I think that's a bit ambitious, especially with the Doomsayer in hand.
No, I like where your head's at. It's like, your opponent very clearly wanted to do something in return.
Yeah, why would they Spellstone this?
Why would they
when
Spellstone? It's a very clear
Hero
hero
powered
power.
on the following turn.
So they want to develop something, so what's your best response to it? Maybe playing Doomsayer or another Librarian. He's like willingly accepting all this damage, and I think it's because No Hands doesn't have the insurance of AoE. He has no Defile or Hellfire, and he's
on
like,
top of, there's a Giant in hand, and he would like to get that Giant down as quickly as possible, so he may just say, you know what, I'll take a little bit of damage from a potential 3-2. Maybe they were just setting up for a Wild Growth into a future Violet Teacher. Because No Hands deliberately kept that Giant to try and play it on 4, and I don't blame him. I think that was a very strong keep. It's just right now he is lacking those essential tools.
it's pretty important, I think, to protect this 3-attack minion. Coining out the Violet Teacher gets another 3-attack minion out, but you're also losing your other one. So having this Panther do repetitive damage, I think, is just as good as coining out this Violet Teacher. Now the Giant can come down for No Hands, but is Boar going to even acknowledge it?
If you're Boar here, I don't know if you can acknowledge it. I think if you try and acknowledge it, that is a very... I mean, first of all, how do you answer it? With the Savage Roar? And coining out a hero power? That's way too much.
Huh. Well, Nourish does give Boar another opportunity to play, but I think that might be too slow. I think his best chance in this game, again, is to get the damage in. If he Savages right now, he gets 7 damage. It's still 12 off. So Swipe couldn't get over the distance.
BoarControl may be considering whether he just wants to run this Teacher out to potentially die to this Giant, because he knows if he doesn't play anything, the Giant is most likely going to trade into this Panther. But if he plays the Teacher, then maybe he gets another 3 damage next turn.
Exactly.
I think that's what he's evaluating right now.
I think he's also calculating like any small possibilities. Is it worth creating like a single 1/1 because of the threat of Defile, but I can maybe push a little bit more damage with Savage Roar? I don't think it's the case. Because you only get 6 plus 4, which is 10. Your opponent's at 16. NoHandsGamer, no AoE, but does have the Amethyst Spellstone for convenient removal, and I think that might be the straw that begins to break the camel's back here.
I'm also looking at the Spirit Singer Umbra. You know, if you play the Spirit Singer Umbra, you force BoarControl to delay a possible Nourish or turn 5 play in order to swipe it, because if they don't, you will then be curving out with Possessed Lackey, and you will most likely get something like a Void Lord. I think the Spellstone is, you know, it seems more appealing, and it probably is the safer play, but there was some strong merit to playing out that Umbra with the intent of lacking next turn.
Well, it's not like Boar has much to do here. Now, the bad news for Boar is that this Mountain Giant play had also big implications when going to turn 6, because you can cube and Dark Pack that Giant and summon more Giants, which means that Boar will pretty much just guarantee lose the board at that state. But I don't know if you can afford to even play around that. If you just swipe and remove, you just basically give development right back to your opponent.
And BoarControl not even taking draw there with as weak a hand as he has right now, just taking that ramp, saying, you know what? I need to draw off the top of the deck something powerful like Whispering Woods, something like Ultimate Infestation if I want any chance in this game.
Interesting. NoHands just going for the Possessed Lackey, and I think this is him saying that if I can get the Void Lords down, I probably win anyways, compared to simply trying to pressure my opponent and potentially walking into disaster.
This is not looking good.
This is looking really bad right now. Really bad.
I think BoarControl played the early game fairly well, but right now you're seeing one of the flaws of Token Druid. Sometimes you get hands that you just
Like
cannot
this.
play
Yeah.
with.
This is probably the biggest criticism about Token Druid, which is you get your finishers, and you often feel like you're missing the proper half of your deck. These are the cards to have in the late stage of the game. The nice thing is that if the board continues to develop, Boar can have the Spreading Plague and Soul to Forest. That's actually a really big opportunity on 10 mana. So when your opponent starts to extend with the Void Lords and whatnot, you can maybe begin thinking about cleaning it up. But this is a deck that, even without AoE, no Hellfire, no Defile, no Godfrey, still able to handle Token Druid very well. This is that bad of a matchup.
And NoHands right now, I believe, is looking at Spirit Singer Upper Prince Taldaram on this Possessed Lackey. Just, you know, get that trigger. Potentially could pull a Void Lord. The one issue I have potentially with this play is if you do pull out something like Void Lord, you give your opponent a Spreading Plague coin Soul to Forest play, which could be pretty strong for BoarControl. I think at the long run it's still going to favor NoHands, but you know, maybe it was a small window for BoarControl to get back in the game.
It's a small window, but with the second Doomguard in the hand from NoHandsGamer, and there's no removal of the Spirit Singer Umbra, that just means that NoHandsGamer will guarantee get the Void Lord next turn. Unless I'm missing something.
Unless he doesn't play Void Lord. No, I mean he does, but...
I mean, the fact is, too, that BoarControl could also like die any second because your opponent has Spirit Singer Umbra up. So the moment a cube comes down on like the Doomguard, you start taking pressure the opposite way, and you're not worried about whether or not you can kill them anymore. You're worried about if you're going to die.
If you're BoarControl here, I think you have to go Spreading Plague, coin, Soul to Forest, and just hope somehow it's enough. I think it's your last push. If you leave this board state up, you are going to die. If you just Spreading Plague, they're just going to value trade into everything, leave you with nothing.
What's the alternative? Spreading Plague swipe? Oh, man. That is a bad feeling.
Oh boy.
Oh, wait, no. This is supposed to pull out the Void Lord so he can fill up the board so he can't cube his stuff.
That way next turn
that's
he can
smart.
go ahead. Okay.
I like that. That's very clever. Because this way, he can't actually cube the Doomguard, so he gets an extra turn. Oh, wait. Is that death? Because I think he did this very, like...
If it's not death, you could also just Dark Pact one of your minions and then cube the Doomguard. I think where BoarControl's head at was that was a very smart spot.
That was very clever. But, you know, Hellfire just off the top is more than enough here. And that's it. So 3-1, NoHandsGamer advances as a local player able to take down one of the top performing Europe players.
Right about now, the funk soul brother, check it out.